Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Bolt with your host, Dr. Jeff Tilley. Today's topic, Issues in Science Education, Conclusion. Where do we go from here? So, over the past 10 podcasts, you've heard me talk about various issues, things which are mostly problems with science education in the U.S. and education in general. And I've referred to dropping U.S. educational performance over the past several decades. And if I'm looking at the most recent worldwide ranking from the Program for International Student Assessment, which compares performance in particularly science, math, and reading literacy across 15-year-old students. So you're basically talking about students 8th, 9th grade, maybe 10th grade, depending on exactly how the system is structured in the various countries. And we see that the overall ranking for the U.S. in 2015 is number 31 in the world. And not only has that position gone down, it could have gone down worse had there not been some equally impressive or even more impressive drops in educational performance in some other countries that had been higher up in the list. So the news is not all bad. One could say, well, at least the U.S. isn't having as severe drops in performances as these other countries. Okay, that's one way of looking at the glass as half full. However, when you see that for the most part worldwide performance is dropping, that doesn't necessarily make it a good thing. There's a few countries that have had very impressive gains. And it's going to be interesting to see how the 2018 results look when they come out, which probably will not be until very late this year, to see if there's any significant changes even from 2015. But what we found interesting between 2015 and 2012 were some very serious drops in other countries. Finland, Hong Kong, South Korea all showed significant drops, even though all three countries still performed better than the U.S. Whereas you have other countries like Portugal, Argentina, Peru, Albania that have seen extremely impressive rises. So if anything, we're seeing a little bit of a tightening of worldwide rankings of achievement in science education as well as in math and in reading. And in science itself, science is not as bad as the overall average. The math scores really drag the U.S. down, the U.S. being ranked 39th in math literacy of 15-year-olds by the metrics that they use. Science, we are at 25th, though there are several countries that are, from a statistical point of view, practically tied with us or could be even higher than us. So it's somewhere in that range. But nonetheless, the U.S. overall performance in the last decade to decade and a half has been largely unchanged. And in the meantime, other countries have improved, other countries have gotten worse, and ultimately what you're seeing is a situation where nothing's getting any better is probably the best way of saying it, and things are probably getting worse given that performance worldwide is slowly dropping on average. So what can we do? I'm here to give a ray of optimism and hope after what's been a series of 10 podcasts where you're wondering, good Lord, is he ever going to say something good? And what I'm going to say in terms of, am I going to say something good? I'm saying that it's possible to improve our science literacy and our science education processes, and even our general education processes. But it's going to take work. A coach and a mentor that I've had in the past has come up with the phrase, "This will not be easy. This will last a while." And that's really applicable here. Change to really improve our science education and really make our standing much better in the world and give our students a much better chance in the world competitively is going to take work. It's going to take hard choices. It's going to take a lot of time. There are no silver bullets here. It's probably going to take a good decade to do a significant turnaround from where we are now. And I have some suggestions to offer. And these suggestions are going to sound a lot like pieces from the previous 10 podcasts. But I'm going to gather them all together here for emphasis and to hopefully inspire you to maybe push for change. First off, resources for teachers and classrooms. If you are in a school district that is trying to do it on the cheap because it's politically expedient to not raise taxes or not come up with a new funding revenue stream for schools, it's not cutting it. You either have not enough materials that are broken down, labs and classrooms that may not be safe, and teachers who are sticking it out, but they're pretty demoralized. And they wonder, why should I keep doing this year after year after year? They don't see the benefit. I've seen that attitude in schools. I've had it myself this past year. It was hard. And what needs to happen with these extra resources, and there are lots of people who get suspicious about school districts that do get money time after time after time because it doesn't seem to contribute to better education, and in many cases it doesn't. It goes to special pet programs. It goes to somebody's idea of a great philosophy, which is very expensive and is not necessarily backed up by tons and tons and tons of data to say that it will work in that educational environment. I taught in a school district this past year with a new superintendent who came in from a very rich, very relatively small California district, and she has been implementing various policies that worked in that district. The demographics are very different. The economics are very different. And so far, the results, at best, are mixed. And it could be argued that things are getting worse there a lot faster than they're getting better. So I am advocating for more resources for schools. But these resources have to be properly spent. And this is where the taxpayers, the parents, you have to be the watchdogs. You have to go in and be willing to do some of the work yourself in evaluating whether or not you think these changes are going to really improve education, or are they somebody's pet project or pipe dream. Because you get people in administration, you get people on school boards, and even in parent advocacy groups that have pet projects. They have pipe dreams. So what I'm saying is everybody needs to be responsible. You can't just put your head in the sand and then have a right to complain later. You've got to step up. You've got to bring yourself up to another level. Technology. It's important. It's not a silver bullet. It's not a substitute for all methods of learning. It can be an important piece, but it shouldn't be everything because it can't do everything. At least not yet. Maybe if virtual reality becomes cheap enough that you can design experiments to act just like the real thing in a virtual world and apply it to everybody and have them get the same tactile experiences with it, then you might be able to say you can replace everything with technology. That's about 20 to 30 years away at least. Teachers need to be paid what they're really worth. And I would say, even while the biggest complaints sometimes come out of the higher ed community, from my own experience in both higher ed and K through 12, I'm going to say shame on you, higher ed community. You don't work nearly as hard as most of the K through 12 teachers that I know, and they get paid a hell of a lot less than you do. So shame on you. And you should do a better job yourselves while you're at it. But you're getting paid all that much more, then we should expect a whole hell of a lot more. And instead, what I've seen is more dedication and more willingness to put in the work and do the work from the K through 12 folks. That leads me to the second recommendation, a return to responsibility and accountability. And while you're saying, oh, sure, yeah, we want to be able to fire teachers if the school doesn't do well on standardized tests. And that's an oversimplification of what I'm talking about. There needs to be a lot more responsibility and accountability all over the place. Parents, you can't hand off all your responsibility to the schools. You need to be involved in your child's education, and not just when you see a bad report card and want to go in and threaten lawsuits and other nonsense. You need to be spending time with your kids. If you're off being, narcissistic in any sort of way, with your business, with vacations, with God knows what, shame on you. You need to be accountable. You need to be there with your kids. For those of you parents who may be struggling, I've been there. I understand your pain. It doesn't excuse it completely. You have to find a way to get involved in your child's education. Even if you're exhausted, find a way. Make the time somewhere, somehow. Even if it involves weird schedule gymnastics. Your child is depending on you. Don't let them down. Teachers, principals, college professors, and department chairs. Grade inflation is one of the biggest problems that we have. And this is because teachers and professors and administrators have been bullied by parents who come in and they threaten lawsuits over grades, which is preposterous. It does nothing to help education or even help how the child evolves and what they can do as an adult. You can't give in. You've got to hold firm. You've got to have standards. Those standards have to mean something. Not just in the standardized tests, but in everything that you do. You will never get better performance until you expect better performance and demand better performance and insist on better performance. This is hard. This is hard because there is so much resistance to this within the whole modern educational milieu, I guess you could say. Parents resist it. Principals respond to parent pressure. Teachers respond to principal pressure and parent pressure. And ultimately, it serves no one. All it does is make our educational system less effective, more watered down, less able to produce the next generation able to compete with their competitors around the world. And there are 24 countries now that are more competitive than we are in science, and with the 2018 results, that may even become more. We'll see. We need to, as part of that, return to teaching students how to think, how to evaluate theories. Memorization doesn't cut it, because memorization, most often students will cram to do it, and they'll forget everything days, if not even hours, after they've crammed for the test. That is not learning. That is not education. That is bullshit. That doesn't help them in the world where they have to think and solve problems. And especially when they run into the situation, which they will, of a problem that they can't go just to Google or Wikipedia and find an answer for. And maybe they can't find someone else to pass the problem off to who does know how to think. We have to return to this type of teaching. We have to also recognize that theories are theories and not facts, and teach students to realize that new data may change a theory completely. And get away from our own tendencies to throw our own belief systems into the educational process. You may think, oh, well, if we indoctrinate the students in this worldview, then the world will become a place which I'm happier in, and I am a better person, and I'm satisfied I've done my job. Shame on you. That is not what education is supposed to be. You can go back to Aristotle, to Socrates, Einstein, Newton. Every great thinker challenged a lot of what became the established belief system, the established worldview, the established world order. We need to have students who are not afraid to challenge what they hear and what someone tells them that they have to believe. And if we have an educational system that tells them you can only believe this and act like this, then you've defeated that purpose and taken that entire ability away. And ultimately, maybe you'll have your little bubble world that you like in the short term. In the long term, it's going to be hell. 1984 is not that far away. What else do we need? We need brave teachers. We need brave parents. We need voices for advocacy. We need courageous teachers that are willing to go against, in some cases, a status quo that propagates many of these issues and problems and just carries them downstream, kicks the can down the road, whatever analogy you want to use. We need courageous teachers. They're in short supply. I try to be one. I've paid for it, but I don't regret it. I hope you've enjoyed this series on science education, and even if you thought it was never going to end, I hope you got something out of it. Even if something I said makes you mad, that's fine. That means there's hope after all. Because you're not so dull and deadened and sedated in this world that something can't still get your mind going, get your heart going, get your emotions going. If I've done that, then this series has done its job. We'll move back to science for at least a few podcasts coming up with the next edition of the Daily Bolt. But for now, I'm going to close this edition of the Daily Bolt and this series on science education. I'm Dr. Jeff Tilley. Have a good night, good morning, good afternoon, and God bless.